we've got a patio, which is about 3 and a bit meters across. But we also have 2 small ponds that we put into the patio. Which,
how many people fall in those?
Well, we do have to station somebody because they come in and they're often so busy looking up at the jungle garden and they walk around the corner and then they almost fall in. Helen Yem, when she visited, several years ago now, I had to scoop her into my arms because I thought she was going to fall in the pond, and she coined them her suicide ponds.
Hello and welcome to episode 112 of Talking Dirty. Over at East Ruston Old Vicarage, looking very sort of sophisticated, I think we can say. A little subdued on the tonal front, but as beautiful as ever. Alan, Edward, Herbert Gray, our happy and very handsome horticulturalist.
And colourful, charming, wonderfully witty. We have, sitting in Cambridgeshire, Thordis Sophia Maria Fredrickson. And I probably got that the wrong way around, but never mind, they're all there.
They're all there. Who cares? Yeah. I mean, it's hilarious
when you have more than one middle name, isn't it?
It's hilarious when you say witty. I've had about 3 seconds of sleep, it feels like. So I apologise in advance for any...
kind of makes your knife sharp, though.
Yeah, there we go. That must be it. We are delighted, I think, coming back for his 5th Talking Dirty appearance, Daniel Brian Cooper. I think we established finally the last time you were on Talking Dirty, of Dan Cooper Garden, the frustrated gardener, no less. How the devil are you, and how are you looking so fresh-faced when I know you have been so busy at garden events and doing your podcast and your business and your blog?
I really don't feel very fresh-faced, so I'm glad I come across like that. Yeah, no, I'm good. It has been such a busy summer and I feel like I've been all over the place. And now I've got in that funny sort of period where sort of summer is over and now I'm thinking about all the sort of Christmassy events that I'm going to be doing. And of course, the weather has just gone sort of ba-boom from sort of summer to autumn. So it feels like this is a sort of watershed moment. But yeah, I'm all right. I'm doing okay.
Don't worry too much, Dan, because I think judging from what I was sort of look ahead on the weather forecast, and I think we've got a little bit of a lull next week when we're going to get warm again. I mean, cool nights, but the warm days, which will make for a lovely autumn. I don't know about you, but we have suffered most horrendous gales. Thordis, I know you did.
Yes. Do you know, this is a terrible admission. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to walk past the allotment. But I could only walk and see the destruction and not do anything about it because I was on the way to a baby singing class. So I can't face it, and I haven't even been to see. I know one wigwam is over, but I don't know quite what destruction has been wrought on this extremely exposed site. So I'll go and look later.
It's tough, isn't it? We did go yesterday to see what had happened, and the sunflowers, we had some immense sunflowers. We don't sow sunflowers on our allotment anymore because the parakeets come and eat the seed heads, and then they scatter the sunflower seeds everywhere, and then they just come up and we sort of edit out the ones we don't want. But there were some 10-footers up there, and they had literally, it looked like, the great storm of 1987. They were torn out of the ground, complete with their root balls. And some of them we managed to put stakes in because they were still looking pretty good and put them back upright. But goodness, it is, you only need one sort of gusty day like that and it causes mayhem, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And it's around about the right time to be the anniversary of the 1987 gales that we said, and don't worry, there isn't a hurricane coming. I remember driving through Kent and seeing huge swathes of sort of trees just decimated.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It seems like a very long time ago now. Goodness.
So hopefully not too much devastation wrought. Obviously some, but this is the weather. This is what being a gardener is, and particularly when you love to grow big blousy blooms, as we all do. And I mean, Dan, anybody who follows the Frustrated Gardener page has been loving your grid of dahlias this year, just like every other year. Always so many glorious varieties, and I'm hoping that at least not all of your dahlia stems were snapped by the winds.
No, just the big ones. And we're actually going to, I think, stop growing some of the really big ones next year because
Yeah,
we
me too.
don't get much value out of them from a cutting point of view. They're, yeah, I'm sort of gradually changing my dahlia tastes and liking the smaller ones with some of the more interesting colors. We've got one this year, I don't know if you come across it, Alan, called Ryecroft Blackberry, which
No.
is the most extraordinary color. It's like a sort of the topping of a creme brulee is the easiest way to describe it. It's sort of like a caramel sort of color, but it's sort of got there's sort of yellow in there somewhere. Occasionally it has this funny quirk of having one white petal in it, but it's really lovely. And the other one that I had to get in, and I'll have to send you a picture, Thordis, because I've only got one bloom out at the moment. I couldn't bring myself to cut it even for you two.
Fair enough.
It's Night Silence. Have you come across that yet?
No.
No. So I think it's quite highly sought after, but it is I'm going to have to describe it now. I mentioned it, aren't I? It is a kind of antique salmon with a very dark reverse to the petals, and I think a photograph is going to help you best, but it is quite the most extraordinary thing. So very excited about that because I bought one this year and it's not very big yet, so I'm looking forward to it being bigger and hopefully propagating it in the spring. But
I've got a picture of it. Yes, I have a picture of it on my phone, and it certainly is well, a very difficult thing to describe, I think.
Yes, but I think possibly got a lot of potential for combinations with sort of dark leaf plants, for example. I think it could look rather good. Yes.
Oh.
It's funny you mentioned how taste in dahlias change. I mean, I always raise dahlias from seed just to see what the hell happens. And I suppose on a ratio of, if you get 100 seedlings, if you get 5 that are half decent, you're lucky. The rest just go on the compost heap. But I have got some, all singles, by the way, but I have got some rather nice ones that I am very pleased about. And they're kind of pink, but they're shot with cream veins through the petals and dark blackberry stains through the petals. And there is one that is just a single dark red. Nothing, dark foliage, but single dark red. And then suddenly on the same plant, there's a bloom that opens and the petals are half red and half white. And I mean, that, you mentioned your dahlia, Ryecroft Blackberry, I think it was. You mentioned that as having the odd white petal. Well, I think that's one of the things about dahlias. They have an instability in them that makes them suddenly do something peculiar.
Yes. I love that. Sam Hopkins, the really dark one, I think that seems to throw the odd white petal. It reminds me of like a Cruella de Vil streak because it's so dark and then suddenly you get this white streak in it.
Yeah.
They are quite unstable, aren't they? But I suppose that is why we have so many incredible varieties, because they have this inclination to do weird and wonderful things.
Exactly.
So, yes, fabulous.
Yeah.
You mentioned that fabulous antique salmony one. What was it? Night Silence.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you leaving that in the ground? Because I think you said you lost. Was it Christopher?
Oh, Christopher Taylor.
Sorry, Christopher Taylor.
We left about 150 in the ground, and I think we lost about 5%, and that 5% equated exactly to my Halls of Heaven order. So more by luck than judgment, there was a plant to fill every gap. Of course, we lost some of the ones that, we wouldn't have wanted to lose, and ended up keeping some of the ones that we'd happily have lost. But that's just
always.
And it's very interesting, actually, because they performed very differently this year. So some of them came up incredibly early this year, a bit frighteningly early. Other ones didn't emerge until June. But the quality of the blooms was pretty good, actually, this year. I thought that perhaps them being sort of established tubers and not having been divided up, the blooms might be smaller, but that didn't really come to pass. So we've been pretty happy with leaving them in the ground.
Yeah, I think I was pretty happy with mine, actually. They came back largely. I mean, I wasn't aware that we lost anything. I'm sure we probably did, but I wasn't aware of it. They were so, you know, I mean, they were so lush and
All
lovely.
you people over there with your -4s.
For one night.
We didn't have any frost at all last winter, so we were really, really lucky. It was a bit of a freak, yes.
You just keep quiet.
I mean, one of the things that made me laugh was the fact that I've got lots of hedychiums or gingers in the garden, and you know, there's a certain band of people, they'll know who they are, that visit the garden on a regular basis, and they come along and they love to tell you what's wrong, and that's the way they get their enjoyment. I don't mind that because it makes me smile, but you know, they were poking the rhizomes of my hedychiums or gingers in the spring, and they were all squidgy. You lost all your gingers. Well, I just sat tight and said nothing, and hopefully I thought they will regenerate from underneath, and they have. And so eat your words, you horrible. Oh, ye of little faith. But I mean, and I noticed this morning, I was looking out my kitchen window at the relatively, well, it was new this year, sort of, it's kind of lemon cream, blue and mauve border. I'm not terribly good at keeping colours separate anymore, but I mean, I'm trying to. And there is one thing standing out like a beacon of light, and it's an orange hedychium right in the middle of it. So I think it will probably be beheaded, but before we open to the public today.
Pity. But did I hear that you're doing a trial of them, Alan?
Yes. Yeah. We've got the do you know the National Collection holder, David Gaunt?
They're down in Chichester somewhere, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, he's contributing lots of plants for this trial, and it is going to be. I mean, we can't finalise numbers yet until we know what's available. But probably between 80 and 90, maybe a little bit more than that, plants. And there'll be tender varieties and hardy varieties. And we will be trialling them. We're going to have 2 plants of each, I think, at the moment. It would be nice if there was 3, but you know, it's about finance really, and you've got to work towards what you can get. We are going to have to prepare the ground and get it ready and everything else. So everybody sort of puts something into it, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
And I did suggest that because gingers, when they're growing, they'd like to be almost drowned with water. And I did suggest that we might put leaky pipe on them, and everybody on the committee should have thought this is a good idea, because you know our water table is 19 feet below the surface, and we are a light sandy loam. So we can't guarantee that we're going to get the kind of summer we've had this year, which has had regular bouts of rain. Who knows?
I find, because must have about 20 different ones here. I find that they dislike being in really bright sunlight in combination with being dry, but they can be fairly dry and in shade.
Yeah.
That's probably something to think about.
Yeah, well, mine will be in reasonably bright sunshine, Dan.
Yeah, so they might.
So they will need the extra irrigation. Yeah.
And obviously you do a lot of your gardening apart from at the allotment in containers with your garden at home. So although we've had lots of rain, I assume you've still had a huge watering schedule, because as we all know, plants in containers don't necessarily benefit from the rain that falls from the water that falls from the sky.
No, I even went out this morning and we had a deluge last night, and there was a salvia in a pot that was looking very sorry for itself because the water just hadn't got in there. So you do have to keep an eye. But you know, I think as autumn approaches, there's more humidity, the days are shorter, so the plants aren't quite as stressed, and also you get dew and things like that, so that the pressure does come off a little bit at this time.
I think when you get a sort of a misty or a slightly foggy night, that's a great reviver for plants, because you know they get they get wet leaves without being bashed about, and you know they do absorb moisture through their leaves, so it's a great reviver.
Yeah, I think so. They all look fresh as a daisy after a good dew. Yes.
Now I know off camera you have various things for show and tell. So what would you like to start with?
Well, I thought that so my garden is getting increasingly shady, and I'm sort of slowly giving up on trying to grow some of the things that need a lot of sunshine. And also, you know, small gardens, there's nowhere to hide, and you can't really tolerate plants that don't, you know, give you a decent season of interest, because, you know, have a few, but you know, the plants have to work quite hard in a small space. So I'm increasingly looking for like really interesting foliage plants. So I've done my usual. I'll probably be dripping water all over myself, and I've been out in a very soggy garden to bring lots of lovely things in to show you. So one thing that I have grown in abundance this year, and I've sort of almost used it as a bedding plant, and it doesn't cut well, so you'll have to excuse the droopy nature of this particular sample, but Persicaria painter's palette. Now, this seeds into the pots in my garden and comes up in all the other pots, and I have found that the ones that grew fresh from a seedling early this year are incredibly vigorous and much more colourful than the ones that have been established for a little bit. And I've got some pots of phormiums that are a sort of coppery colour, like the colour in the leaf here, and I've planted that around them, and I really like that combination of sort of copper and then quite vibrant sort of greens and creams. But it's a bit of a favourite. You can just see there that it's about to produce a flower, which will be very insignificant, sort of thread-like red thing. But if you leave them on, they will seed.
Well, one of the good things about Persicaria is that if you don't want to leave them to flower, and no, Dan has just said if you leave them to flower, they will sell seed, which could be a bonus. It might not be a bonus, but it could be. But if they're getting slightly tired with these lovely foliage markings, whichever kind you have, if you hack them back, give them a little bit of water and some liquid feed, within 3 weeks, they're back again. So you refresh your plant, and you can do that twice during the summer. So they're very, very forgiving plants.
Yeah, I think they're great. I mean, yes, tough and easy to grow, and there are lots of different varieties. So they're almost as interesting as coleus. You've got lots of different leaf shapes. So now I did go out and cut a bit of this. So the Boehmerias, is that correct pronunciation, Alan, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is.
So these are nettle relatives. They look very much like it, don't they? You can tell by the leaves. And this is just the top part of a Boehmeria. So the bottom leaves are absolutely enormous. And at this time of year, it produces these interesting sort of green tassels. And this is sieboldiana, so it sort of towers above my head at the moment. It's nearly 8 foot tall, and that's growing in a pot. So imagine what that'd be like in the ground. But there are many, many, many of these creeping out onto the market because people are going and collecting them in the wild, and it is clearly one of those plants that sort of, again, like dahlia, is quite variable. So I've got one called rotundifolia, which it's got almost completely round leaves that are a much softer green than this, and slightly hairy on the leaf surface. But they are such brilliant shade plants. They're quite architectural when you get a big clump, and they arch over nicely, and they just seem to look good and neat all the time. Nothing seems to want to eat them, which is always good. So I'm going to have lots more of these. I've got 3 different varieties already, but the people like Edulis and those sort of nurseries seem to be really getting into them.
I love the idea of one of those, or a clump of them growing at East Ruston, and overhearing someone saying, "Oh, look, he's got an enormous nettle. Even the nettles here are huge."
They probably would as well, wouldn't they? A very choice nettle.
Do you have any yet, Alan?
But yeah, I do actually. Nowhere near as big as Dan's, I have to say, but in a lovely shady area just near my laundry room, which you will know. We did an experiment there this year. We actually planted some cannas in there, and it's in permanent shade. There's no sun getting in there at all. And we planted the Canna iridiflora, very tall pink one. And it has done brilliantly in there. And I mean, I just can't, I find myself walking through like this. I've got to look to the right or to the left, depending which way I'm going. But I can't stop looking at them. They've done stupendously well. And I think that looking around for various plants. I bought recently one from Pan Global from Nick Mesa, and it was Plectranthus, but it was something else before it was Plectranthus, and then it's been something else afterwards. I don't know. Don't ask me what it is, but it's a very tall Japanese plant. It has huge heads of tiny purple flowers, very late. It's a late autumn flower. And this is something that I'm very interested in, because we always try and keep the thread going, keep the garden looking good almost year round. I know you can't, but to me, there's always something interesting, and I don't like the idea of putting the garden to bed. Never have and never will. So these sort of plants that they earn their keep. They earn their. Dan's absolutely right. Some things, when they're not eaten or they're not messed around with too much, they have a silent sort of beauty about them, the quality, and eventually it stands out. It's like, look, it's looking. If you look at a very well dressed lady in wonderful quality, camel coloured clothes, you probably wouldn't look at it twice, and then suddenly it clicks in here, and you think that is quality, class.
I've never looked like that in my life.
I think we would all fall over backwards if that happens. So don't, don't do it.
But
Don't do it. Well, so while we're still on the sort of Nestle-like things, I think I might have mentioned this before, but this is a hardy Pilea called I don't know if it's Tasmanian Silver or Taiwan Silver, but this again is another plant that seems to just look nice all of the time. This is a bit that's snapped off in the horrible weather, so it looks a lot better than this in the garden, and I'll have a picture for you for the podcast. But again, another thing that I will say about nearly all of the plants I'm mentioning today is that they're all incredibly easy to grow from cuttings as well. So the Plectranthus, like Alan mentioned just then, Coleus, Pileas, Boehmerias, they're all very easy to root in just little jars of water. So all good plants for bulking up if you need more. And I know Alan loves propagating things. So so that's another great one. Now, I thought there's a bit of a colour required, I think. So I bought there are lots of begonias appearing now that are hardy or borderline hardy. They'd certainly be hardy with Alan. And they are also great value if you're trying to sort of create some exotic effect. So again, apologies for the tatty leaf, but this one is Tye Dye. I think it's palmata Tye Dye. Now this is hardy here, even in a pot outside. And of course it has those big sort of almost like Rex begonia leaves with that nice sort of I don't know what you would call it. It's almost silvery. It's sort of definitely glistens in the sun. But these, if you have a spot that is sort of, well, this never gets any sun where this is, so sort of permanently shady, not bone dry, but they're fairly tolerant. And well,
back to the leaf as well.
Yes. Oh yes, the back is just as nice. I should have done that, shouldn't I, before? And if that's not showy enough for you, I mean, one I've had for absolutely years, and it's much more showy offy, is Benitochiba, which again has that amazing metallic sort of surface to the leaf. And I mean, it's a very strong colour. This isn't one of the newest leaves. It's not quite as sort of pink as the new ones are, but again, I've had that growing in a pot outside for years now, and it's as hardy as anything, and you can divide it or take cuttings from it and have more. So
now, we have established last winter you didn't have any frost, so how cold does your garden get, Dan?
Oh well, this one survived the beast from the east twice, so yes, so it's okay. I mean, whether you would really want to take that risk is another thing. You could easily just bring it into a greenhouse or something and just keep it over winter, and it makes a very nice house plant as well. I have got one indoors too, but yes, I mean, it will survive, but you might not want to risk it as much as I do. But I think they're rather fab.
They're wonderful. Such patterned leaves. And the thing is, like I mentioned, the underside, when they blow in the breeze, you know, you look out your patio window on a breezy day and then you get all those purples flashing with the silvers, and it's lovely. I did have
We
some.
haven't mentioned is begonia flowers, and most of them do actually flower. Even that lovely palmate luxurians, the fabulous fingered leaves like a parasol. You know, that has sprays of teeny weeny white flowers, but they're big sprays. I can see some out of the window now. I've got it on my front doorstep, and they are quite tiny. They're almost like small hydrangeas.
I came home from your garden earlier in September and went into my greenhouse and looked at my minuscule Begonia luxurians, and I was like, now come on, you've got a bit of growing to do, and showed it the photograph of the ones outside your front door and said, you know, this is what you're going to be when you grow up.
So did it just feel wholly inadequate after it had been shown a photo of Alan's Begonia luxurians?
I mean, it's quite hard to come back from a visit to Alan's garden, because you think, you know, you start to think, oh yeah, I'm doing all right actually, and then you you walk around and think, okay, I've got some way to go yet.
No, but I have to say, my plants, I don't want to put you off in any way, but my Begonia luxurians, they're probably 8 to 10 years old. And every year, you know, they're in those big pots and things, but every year they have the top of their compost and lots of their roots scraped away, and they have fresh compost put back with a little enrichment in it, shall we say. I mean, it could be well-rotted manure, it could be anything, but I mean, it's and you know, a general purpose fertilizer, and they get fed at every watering half strength.
I mean, they certainly, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen such magnificent ones. They are a treat. So as is the whole arrangement either side of your door. That's one of my photos of the year. But I talking about the ones that's to flower, I wouldn't really be without this one, which is grandis evansiana alba. This one, there are lots of name varieties of these now. I have got one called Snowpop, which is very pretty. It's a bit smaller than this one, but yes, it's got these lovely sort of red backed leaves, and I don't have big swathes of anything in my garden because my garden's not really big enough, but we have a path that leads to our back garden, which I suppose is about 25 foot long, and I have this growing all the way along the path because it doesn't seed exactly because it comes from the little bulbils, but it spreads itself prodigiously. And this time of year, you've got the pink one, haven't you, Alan? In your sort of near your plant area, and it's just such good value at this time of year. Any of those Begonia grandis, aren't they?
Oh yes, I mean I've got a pot with a ginger in it, which should we say I'm growing on the ginger, but it was next to one of these evansiana albas last year, and because the pot is full of seedlings of the white one, and you know, you talk about them sort of seeding or pipping, whatever you like to say, because there's little pips that appear in the leaf axils is where the new plants come from, and they just fall onto the ground and they germinate. Now I know a lady who grows this in South Norfolk, and she has a lovely garden, but her garden floods, and every winter these begonias are underwater, and they still come through and still come up the following year. So they're much more resilient perhaps than people realize.
Well, so that being said, mine was by the overflow pipe by the back of my house, and I thought that's fine because Rosie's floods every year, or whichever garden it's in, and it died. But I think that was the cold. But all the pips seceded around, so I've still got it. But for about a month, I thought, I've lost it. I'm so sad. It's not coming back. And then I noticed in the pots around all the little babies coming, and it was like party time in the Fredrickson household.
They are late to appear, which I think some people would, may think that they've lost it. But yes, they're very good at regenerating. They're sort of surviving.
Some plants are late to appear, Dan. I mean, we touched on hedychiums or gingers a little while ago, and they're very late to appear. So if people are growing them outside, I mean, please be patient if you can.
Yeah. But I would thoroughly recommend that and of course, you know, it looks as fresh as a daisy at this time of year. When so many things don't look fresh as a daisy, you know, it's great to have.
I'm just going to grab my coffee.
You get your coffee. Oh, Dan arrives, Alan goes.
I can't hear you at the moment.
Oh.
Oh dear.
He looks very intelligent as he tries to fix it. Oh. You want to get everything, don't you? Grabby, grab hands.
Dan, you look as if you're an HD, whatever they call it. High definition. I mean, terribly, terribly clearly. Thought that you look as if you've been photographed through a veil.
Soft focus, darling.
Yes.
So I think what it is that my laptop is really old. My newer laptop won't talk to my microphone. And to be honest, when I used my newer laptop, the HD was so utterly terrifying of my face that I quite happily went back to soft focus.
Don't you just love that? I tell you. You say that at your age, how do you think I feel? I tell you, hey!